The soul switch. I saved my mother's body, but put a psychopath's mind inside. My name is Dr. Alastair Finch. I'm 28, a brilliant but disgraced neurolinguistic scientist who once specialized in non invasive consciousness transfer, a fringe field that earned me scorn from the mainstream academic community. My work was deemed a failure until 2 weeks ago when my mother, Eleanor Finch, suffered a massive debilitating stroke. The damage to her brain was irreversible, leaving her in a vegetative state, but her physical self was perfectly healthy. My mother was the reason for my work. She was my rock, a kind, vibrant historian who raised me alone. I couldn't let her go. The solution. I retreated to my private soundproofed laboratory beneath our old Victorian house in San Francisco. I revived my dormant project, Project Chimera, using a complex array of quantum entangled neural scanners and a proprietary electromagnetic field generator. I believed I could transfer a viable consciousness into my mother's vacant cerebral cortex. The problem: I needed a donor consciousness of mine to seed the empty vessel of her brain, and I needed it fast. I found the solution in the city morgue's database using my old university clearance. Subject 984, a man named Silas Thorne, had died 24 hours ago from a severe acute cerebral hemorrhage. His brain tissue was completely destroyed, but his consciousness theoretically was still ringing in the electrical field surrounding the body. Silas Thorne was a notorious subject in the psychiatric files, a brilliant, high-functioning sociopath who was awaiting trial for a series of high-profile financial crimes and the suspected yet unproven murder of his business partner. His mind was powerful, organized, and terrifyingly efficient. It was a risk I was desperate enough to take. The transfer. The night of the experiment was a blur of frantic preparation. I had my mother, Eleanor Finch, stabilized on the operating table, her beautiful face serene beneath the neural cap. Beside her, I had the container holding the preserved tissue of Silas Thorne. I activated the quantum field. The room pulsed with a low electromagnetic hum. I spoke to the empty shell of my mother's mind. "I know this is wrong, Mom," I whispered, tears blurring my vision. "But I need you back, just the architecture, just the physical vessel." I initiated the transfer. A violent surge of power erupted and the lights flickered. For 5 agonizing minutes, the two consciousnesses, my mother's neural architecture and the donor mind of the psychopath, Silas Thorne, battled and merged within the magnetic field. When the field shut down, the room fell silent. My mother's monitors showed immediate stable neural activity. The brain activity was viable, strong, and highly organized. I had succeeded. Her body was saved. The awakening. It took 3 days for her to awaken fully. I sat by the hospital bed I'd set up in the lab, holding the hand of the woman who looked exactly like my mother. Her eyes fluttered open. They were my mother's warm brown eyes, but they were cold, assessing, and utterly devoid of maternal love. "Alastair." The voice was my mother's familiar gentle tone, but the delivery was sharp, dry, and commanding. "Where am I? And where is the nearest stock market ticker?" I stammered. "You're home, Mom. You had an accident. I saved you." The person in the bed smiled, a thin, cruel twist of the lips that Eleanor Finch had never possessed. "An accident. I died, boy. I remember the pain, the sudden glorious silence. And then I remember you dragging me back." The voice changed, dropping into a deep, familiar resonance I recognized from the psychiatric files. "Silas Thorne remembers everything, Alistair. Your crude, desperate experiment, the consciousness transfer, and your mother. The new tenant. The new tenant in my mother's body." Silas Thorne stood up immediately, tearing the IV from his arm, with a casual disregard for the bleeding. "This is quite the upgrade on," Eleanor stated, flexing her hand. "Younger, healthier, and with a brilliant new physical disguise. I was stuck in a body that was about to be executed by the state. Now I have a clean slate and a highly advantageous political profile." I was frozen in horror. "You're supposed to be dormant, a seed consciousness you've taken over. I don't play second fiddle, doctor," Eleanor sneered. "Your mother's weak, compassionate mind was easily overwritten by my superior neural structure. She is gone, I am here. And I know your pathetic little secret: you committed a felony to resurrect me." Silas Thorne, inhabiting my mother's body, knew he was untouchable. He was legally dead, and the body he inhabited had no criminal record. "Now let's discuss my new life," he continued, pacing the lab. "First order of business, I need to finalize the transfer of the Thorne Development Group assets before the legal probate closes. You, my dear son, are going to help me." The first command. Silas Thorne, in Eleanor Finch's body, stared at me with my mother's cold eyes. The money I stole, the alleged murder, that was all designed to collapse my business partner's stock and give me sole access to the Thorne Development Group assets. Eleanor explained, "But my sudden death complicated things. I need you to use your scientific credentials to access the Thorn Development Group's sealed financial server. I need the quantum key to finalize the asset transfer. He picked up a simple antique gold locket from my mother's dressing table locket containing a photograph of me as a child. You will help me, Alistair, or I will use your mother's identity to destroy your life and expose your illegal experiment to the FBI. Eleanor threatened crushing the delicate locket in her new powerful hand. You saved your mother's body, but you now serve the psychopath inside. The worst horror was realizing that the man I had saved was the very man who controlled the corporate corruption network that destroyed the lives of the Vance family and Damian Nolan. Silas Thorne was part of the Architect network. I had committed a crime to save my mother's body, and now the psychopath I put inside held the receipt for my soul. My lab, once a sanctuary of scientific exploration, was now a prison controlled by the cold, calculating mind of Silas Thorne, residing in the familiar body of my mother, Eleanor Finch. Eleanor spent the first 24 hours meticulously reviewing news feeds and financial data. The sociopath was clearly enjoying the ultimate disguise. He even used my mother's soft-tailored clothing to attend a sympathy luncheon for himself, Silas Thorne, ensuring his continued legal death was believable. The quantum key is the absolute priority Alistair and Eleanor commanded returning to the lab. It's the final piece of encryption for the Thorn Development Group's sealed financial server. Without it, the probate process will liquidate my entire empire. Where is it? I asked, my voice low. I had to play along, gather information, and find a way to reverse the consciousness transfer. It's hidden in the one place no one would ever suspect me of returning to my former penthouse in Manhattan. I built a specialized Faraday cage vault into the master study, accessible only by a 4-part biological key. The biological key. Eleanor detailed the complex security system. The vault didn't use codes. It required 4 simultaneous biological inputs. 1. Retinal scan. Required Silas Thorne's unique pattern. 2. Voice print required Silas Thorne's specific vocal cadence. 3. DNA sample required Silas Thorne's DNA. 4. Neural signature required a specific live pattern from Thorne's mind. The beauty of your little science experiment, Alistair, is that 3 of those keys are now easily accessible, Eleanor stated, smirking in my mother's face. The retina, the voice print, and the neural signature are now fully integrated into this body. But the DNA sample, I pressed. You said your previous body was destroyed by a cerebral hemorrhage. There won't be a viable sample. There is done, Eleanor countered. I am meticulous. Before my planned death a ruse to escape financial liability, I prepared a perfect, untainted DNA sample and had it placed in a sterile environment. It's hidden in a secure private morgue I owned in New York City. The co-conspirator. I couldn't travel to New York and access the DNA sample alone. The security surrounding the morgue was too tight. I needed a partner, someone who was not only brilliant, but morally compromised enough to help me. I thought of Dr. Adrian Sterling, my former graduate school rival. Adrian had built his reputation on proving Project Chimera was junk science. He now ran a lucrative but highly unethical private genetic sequencing lab in Manhattan. I contacted him, appealing to his ego and desperation for a breakthrough. I need access to a secured private morgue for a biological sample retrieval, I explained cryptically. I'm offering you a chance to prove Project Chimera works, Adrian. The first fully successful live consciousness transfer. I just need you to get me past the security. Adrian was skeptical, but the lure of vindication and scientific glory was too strong. The morgue is owned by a private corporation called Omega Solutions, heavily shielded. I can get you the schematics and a timed access window for a DNA sample, Alistair, Adrian agreed. But if this is a trick, I will expose you to the board myself. You owe me everything. The Manhattan morgue. I flew to Manhattan, Eleanor, Silas Thorne, following me as my ostensibly concerned relative. He needed to be physically present to execute the retinal voice and neural scans later. Under the cover of a massive electrical grid failure Adrian manufactured, we infiltrated the Omega Solutions private morgue. The DNA vault was deep underground. Using Adrian's schematics, I found the sample box labeled ST. As I retrieved the sterile sealed vial containing Silas Thorne's DNA, I noticed a detail Adrian had missed. The morgue wasn't just storing bodies, it was a research facility. I saw a secure terminal displaying a partial list of names awaiting research contracts. One name was highlighted in bold: Dr. Elias Vance. The fugitive neuroscientist who was the ultimate asset in the corporate scandal, the Architect, was somehow connected to this private morgue. This wasn't just a corporate conspiracy, it was a network of bodies and minds. The first disruption. I sealed the DNA vial. Eleanor watched me, her eyes gleaming with impatience. Excellent, Alistair, we have the DNA. Now we proceed to the penthouse and retrieve the key. Just as we prepared to leave, the internal security alarm blared. We weren't caught by the morgue staff, we were locked in. A gruff voice boomed over the intercom system. This is Detective Marcus Mac Riley, NYPD. We have sealed the perimeter. We received an anonymous tip regarding the presence of a known fugitive, Dr. Alastair Finch. Detective Riley was known for his relentless pursuit of white-collar criminals, and he was the lead investigator on the original Silas Thorne murder case, the victim being Thorne's business partner. He's here. Eleanor hissed, pulling my mother's body behind a rack of stored cadavers. Riley knows I faked my death. He's here to confirm I'm gone. He can't see me. If he even suspects I'm alive, the whole game is over and I lose the asset transfer. I was trapped between the man who wanted to solve his case and the mother who was now the key to saving her body, but destroying my life. I realized the horror my desperation to save my mother's body had made me the key to resurrecting a global criminal, and now my actions were attracting the very attention that could expose the entire illegal consciousness transfer. The sound of Detective Marcus Riley's team methodically sweeping the Omega Solutions morgue echoed through the service corridors. Silas Thorne, operating within Eleanor Finch's body, remained unnervingly calm. Riley is thorough but predictable, Eleanor hissed, pressing her back against a refrigerated wall. He doesn't want me dead. He wants me proven alive. My disappearance ruined his murder case. He suspects I faked my death to escape prosecution. He can't know I'm inside this woman. He's after me for illegal use of university credentials, I countered, clutching the vial of Thorne's DNA. And you, Alistair, are my perfect distraction. Eleanor smiled cruelly. You are the visible fugitive. I am the grieving widow's friend. Using a forgotten maintenance tunnel, we slipped out of the morgue, leaving Dr. Adrian Sterling to handle the police inquiry. Adrian wouldn't admit to his involvement, but he would certainly be tracking my every move, hoping to seize the scientific proof of the transfer. The Midtown Penthouse. Our next destination was Silas Thorne's former Manhattan penthouse, the location of the Faraday cage vault holding the quantum key. The penthouse was sealed by Thorne's estate awaiting probate. We gained access via a secure freight elevator. The apartment was vast, sterile, and filled with hyper-minimalist furniture, a reflection of Thorne's cold, precise mind. We found the vault hidden behind a retractable wall in the master study. It was a seamless, custom-built steel enclosure. This is where I hid my contingency, Alistair. Eleanor explained, her eyes glittering with excitement. The 4 biological inputs must be simultaneous. Set up the scanners. I quickly assembled the specialized equipment. I'd brought a neural sensor array, a high-resolution retinal scanner, and a voice analysis microphone, positioning them near the vault door. Executing the biological key. We initiated the sequence 1, retinal scan and voice print. Eleanor stood before the vault, her mother's eyes focused and steady. She recited the required phrase, a complex, numerical sequence from Thorne's financial codes, in my mother's voice, but with the cold, precise cadence of Silas Thorne. The indicators flashed green. 2. DNA sample. I carefully inserted the vial of Thorne's DNA into the dedicated analysis port. The scanner read the sample. Green. 3. Neural signature. I attached the neural cap to Eleanor's head. This was the most crucial test. The vault required the specific electrical signature of a living Silas Thorne brain, a pattern unique to his psychopathic neural architecture. I initiated the final scan. The needle on the gauge jumped, stabilizing rapidly at the required frequency. The transfer had successfully maintained the psychopath's unique brain signature. The vault's security console flashed access granted, the quantum key, and the new threat. The Faraday cage vault opened with a quiet hydraulic hiss. Inside, illuminated by a single spotlight, was the quantum Kia small crystalline drive nestled in a custom stand. Eleanor reached for it, her mother's hand trembling with greedy anticipation. But the moment he touched the key, the entire penthouse security system went red and a high-pitched alarm wailed. A voice, smooth, educated, and filled with simmering rage, boomed over the intercom. Welcome home, Silas. I knew you couldn't resist the key. It was Adrian Sterling. Alistair. Adrian's voice sneered through the speakers. I didn't lead Riley to the morgue. I was tracking you. You didn't just transfer consciousness. You achieved neural persistence. You know what this means. You're a liability, and I'm taking over Project Chimera. Adrian Sterling. My scientific rival had followed me, and upon confirming the success of the transfer through the energy signature of the quantum key activation, he had remotely seized control of Thorne's penthouse security system, a system he had likely helped design. The bargain. The main elevator opened, and Adrian Sterling walked out, flanked by 2 private security guards. He wasn't interested in the law. He was interested in the science. I need the body, Alistair, Adrian stated, pointing to my mother. The successful fusion of two unique neural patterns, a psychopath's genius and an aging historian's resilience, is worth billions. I'll take the body, the data, and the key. Silas Thorne cornered, dropped his disguise. You won't get the key, Sterling. It's bound to my biometric structure. Without me, it's a useless paperweight. Ah, the sociopath speaks, Adrian replied, completely focused on the scientific marvel. I don't need you, Silas. I need your architecture. Alistair, give me the transfer parameters. I can put the real Eleanor Finch back in her body, or I can put a trained primate in there. Your choice. Adrian was offering to reverse the transfer toe, save my mother's mind, but at the cost of giving him the world's most dangerous scientific breakthrough. Just as I weighed the impossible choice, the main security door exploded inward. It wasn't Adrian's men. Detective Marcus Riley and a team of NYPD officers stormed the penthouse, guns drawn. Riley hadn't been fooled by Adrian's diversion. He had been tracking the massive proprietary energy signature of the Faraday Cage Vault activation, a signature unique to the Thorne Development Group and its criminal activity. NYPD, drop the weapons. You, Dr. Sterling, you're under arrest for breaking and entering and corporate espionage, Riley commanded. He stopped, his eyes landing on my mother's face. He recognized the DNA sample from the morgue, the vault activation, and the person standing before him. And you, Eleanor Finch, Riley stated, his voice ringing with grim certainty. You are a witness to a felony. We need to talk about Silas Thorne and your involvement in his alleged murder. The transfer was no longer a scientific secret. It was a legal disaster unfolding live in front of the one detective obsessed with proving Silas Thorne was a criminal. The scene in the penthouse was secured. Detective Marcus Riley had arrested Dr. Adrian Sterling for breaking and entering, but the core of his attention was on me and Eleanor, Silas Thorne. We were escorted to the precinct, me as a material witness, and Eleanor as a key person of interest in the unsolved murder of Silas Thorne's business partner. Riley separated us immediately. I was terrified. If Silas Thorne, operating as Eleanor Finch, cracked under pressure, the entire illegal consciousness transfer would be exposed, and my mother's body would be evidence in a criminal conspiracy. The lie. Riley interrogated me first. He didn't focus on the vault. He focused on my scientific past. Your doctor, Alistair Finch, the disgraced genius obsessed with neural transfer, Riley stated, leaning across the table. Eleanor Finch is your mother. She was grieving the sudden death of her late husband's business associate, Silas Thorne, and you, doctor, were illegally experimenting with electrical fields in her home lab. Now, 2 weeks after Thorne's death, you're found in his secure penthouse with a rival scientist trying to steal a proprietary financial key. Explain the connection. I maintained the desperate lie Eleanor had crafted. I was trying to help my mother, detective. She was suffering a psychological break after her stroke, believing Thorne had faked his death. Adrian Sterling hired me to help him secure the key before my mother could destroy it. Riley stared at me, his eyes sharp. Eleanor Finch suffered a stroke. Now she's perfectly lucid in the center of a corporate break-in, and her body is running a feverish brain pattern. You're hiding something, doctor. Something medical. I successfully deflected the medical questions, but I knew Riley was only one step away from subpoenaing my lab notes. The psychopath's gambit. Riley then moved to the adjacent interrogation room to question Eleanor. I strained to hear through the thin wall. Mrs. Finch, let's talk about Silas Thorne, Riley began, his voice calm. He was awaiting trial for fraud and suspicion of murder. He died 2 weeks ago. Now a key to his assets has been activated by your biometric data. The response in my mother's gentle voice was cold, manipulative brilliance. Detective, I was deeply in love with Silas. Eleanor sighed, adopting the perfect grieving widow role. We were secretly engaged. Silas was paranoid. He told me that if anything happened to him, only my biometrics, the biometrics of the one person he trusted, would activate his emergency financial contingency. I came here with Alistair to honor his memory, to secure the quantum key, and ensure his fortune didn't fall into the hands of his criminal rivals. Riley challenged him. The DNA sample, Eleanor, wept convincingly. Silas was a genius. He gifted me his DNA before he died as a symbol of our commitment. He told me it was the ultimate proof of his love. Is that so hard to believe, detective, that a man in love would trust his fiancée? The sociopath's lie was perfect. It accounted for every piece of evidence, the biometric activation, the DNA, and Eleanor's presence, while simultaneously elevating Silas Thorne to a romantic figure framed by the system. Riley, obsessed with the missing murder case, was entirely captivated by the emotional narrative. The hidden clue. Riley released us temporarily. He was convinced I was a misguided son, and Eleanor was a grieving, slightly unstable fiancée. He confiscated the quantum key as evidence, believing it was the key to Thorne's financial crimes, unaware that the body he was talking to was Silas Thorne. As we were leaving the precinct, Eleanor paused by the elevator and subtly activated the quantum key fob with her thumb in action that should have been impossible since the key was sealed in an evidence bag. The key had a secret function. It wasn't just an encryption device, it was also a directional transmitter. Eleanor whispered to me, the chilling sociopathic malice returning to my mother's voice. Riley thinks he has the key. He has the fob Alastair. But the key is merely a sophisticated locator beacon for the real asset, the quantum server. He's leading us right to it. I realized that by confiscating the key, Riley had activated Silas Thorne's final contingency plan. The detective was now an unwitting delivery system, the quantum server's location. Back in our San Francisco lab, Eleanor used a highly encrypted civilian satellite array to track the key's signal. The signal led to a single secure location on the West Coast, the Thorne Development Group's corporate headquarters in Seattle, Washington. The key is transmitting its location every 60 seconds to the mainframe Alastair. The quantum server is not a financial ledger. It's the master control unit for every shell company, every offshore account, and every corporate secret owned by the Thorne Development Group, Eleanor explained. But the tracking revealed a secondary weaker signal emanating from the headquarters. That's a suppressed energy signature. I realized analyzing the frequency. It's a non-invasive neural transfer field. It's the same frequency I used on you, Mom. Someone else is running Project Chimera, Eleanor concluded, her eyes narrowing. Someone at the highest level of the Thorne Development Group is using my scientific data, and if they have the equipment, that they might know how to reverse the transfer. The true objective was no longer just the money. It was the scientific technology itself. The person controlling the Thorne Development Group wasn't just a corporate criminal. They were a neuro-linguistic rival who had stolen my research. I had to get to Seattle, not to help Silas Thorne retrieve his money, but to find out who had stolen my work and if they could save my mother's mind. We flew to Seattle, tailing Detective Riley and the Quantum Keys beacon, which led straight to the monolithic headquarters of the Thorne Development Group. The building was a fortress of mirrored glass and concrete, representing absolute, untouchable corporate power. Eleanor Silas Thorne was unnervingly confident, using my mother's appearance to blend seamlessly into the corporate environment. Riley believes the quantum key is evidence in a murder case, Eleanor explained, as we watched the detectives' team sweep the building's lobby. But the key is simply an authentication token. We need the physical connection to the quantum server itself. The secondary neural transfer frequency I had detected was still active, emanating from the building's executive level, the office of the CEO. Someone here is running Project Chimera, I stressed. Someone stole my research. If they have the capacity to run a live transfer, they might have the protocols to reverse it. The identity of the thief. We used my old university credentials and Eleanor's grieving relative status to access the building's less secure upper floors. I hacked into the building's internal security network to pinpoint the source of the neural frequency. The signal was originating from the private restricted laboratory adjacent to the office of the current CEO of the Thorne Development Group, Mr. Julian Thorne, Silas Thorne's younger brother. Julian, Eleanor, whispered a raw blend of recognition and contempt in her mother's voice. He was always the legitimate face, the good son. He must have found my lab notes after my death. He didn't just steal the company, he stole my science. The rivalry was clear. Julian hadn't just taken over the company. He had stolen Silas's most prized intellectual property, the consciousness transfer technology, infiltrating the CEO's lab. We bypassed the executive floor security utilizing a maintenance shaft. The private lab was ultra-modern, a massive upgrade from my dusty basement. Julian Thorne had weaponized my research. The lab contained a fully operational, miniaturized version of my Project Chimera equipment, the quantum entangled neural scanners, but refined and perfected. A secure database displayed live consciousness metrics, all labeled Project Phoenix. He didn't just replicate it, Alistair, he improved it, Eleanor noted, tracing the lines of the scanner with a look of proprietary envy. I rushed to the database terminal, searching for the reversal protocol. If Julian had refined the transfer process, he would have designed an unmerge function. I found a file labeled Reversal Protocol v3.0. My heart leaped. Just as I prepared to download the file, a voice cut through the silence. Looking for the key to your mother's mind. Alistair Julian Thorne stood in the doorway. He was sophisticated, calm, and utterly ruthless, the perfect opposite of his chaotic older brother. The ultimate betrayal. Julian didn't look surprised to see his brother's consciousness inhabiting my mother. I expected you, Silas, Julian said calmly, ignoring my mother's body. You always were predictable. The quantum key was designed to lead you here. I needed you to activate the network and bring the final authentication token to me. Eleanor. Silas snarled. The key is with the FBI, Julian. You won't get the assets. Oh, I already have the key, Julian countered, holding up the genuine quantum key fob. I replaced the one the FBI took with a dummy tracking device. Detective Riley is working for me, Silas. He's been on my payroll since the fraud case 3 years ago. He's not hunting you, he's doing my retrieval work. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. Detective Marcus Riley wasn't just obsessed with the case. He was Julian Thorne's mole, tasked with retrieving the key and then eliminating the witnesses. Julian then turned his attention to me, his smile chilling. And you, Alistair, you were the missing variable. You perfected the transfer. You are the only one who can operate Project Phoenix. Julian gestured to a large clear containment chamber in the center of the lab. Inside, attached to a full neural cap, was a still comatose body. Meet the real reason I stole your research, Julian said proudly. Meet my father, Arthur Thorne. The father's prison. The body in the containment chamber was old, frail, and bore the scars of a recent massive stroke. Our father suffered a catastrophic stroke 3 months ago. He is a vegetable, Julian explained, but he holds the absolute power, the final corporate authorizations in his dormant consciousness. I need to transfer my mind into his body to assume absolute control of the Thorne Development Group. Project Phoenix will be the ultimate corporate takeover. Julian pointed to the terminal where I'd found the reversal protocol. I stole the reversal protocol not to save your mother, Alistair, but to wipe out my father's consciousness entirely and make his body an empty vessel for me. And you need the quantum key to power the final transfer phase, I realized. Precisely. And you, Alistair, are the only one with the skill to run the sequence. Julian finished, his eyes gleaming. You will conduct the transfer. You will put me into my father's body. And when you are done, you will use the reversal protocol to completely wipe your mother's neural architecture, destroying both Silas and Eleanor forever. Or I will expose your crime to Riley and the world. I looked at the dormant body of Arthur Thorne, the true mastermind behind the corporate corruption and the man who ordered the murder of Eliza Vance. I had one chance to run the reversal protocol, but not on my mother's body, on the quantum server itself, which was now online. I stood in Julian Thorne's corporate lab, facing an ethical and scientific nightmare. Julian, cold and composed, held the genuine quantum key, ready to assume the identity of his comatose father, Arthur Thorne. Eleanor. Silas Thorne, trapped in her own body, was roaring with fury, witnessing the potential annihilation of his empire and his mind. You have two options, Alistair, Julian stated, gesturing to the Project Phoenix console. Run the transfer sequence from me to father's body, or run the reversal protocol on your mother's body right now. Choose. I knew I couldn't sacrifice my mother's chance at freedom by erasing her brain. I had to delay. The transfer from a live conscious donor you to a stroke victim, Arthur Thorne, requires calibration. My original Project Chimera was designed for comatose donors. I countered, relying on my scientific expertise to buy time. If you fail both, you and your father's body could suffer irreversible cognitive damage. Julian hesitated. His ambition was absolute, but his life was precious. Calibrate it then, but do not waste my time. Hijacking the console. While Julian monitored the transfer environment and Eleanor was guarded by Julian's security team, I worked on the Project Phoenix console. The interface was familiar. Julian had merely refined my original code. I found the core flaw: the system relied on the quantum server, the large mainframe I had tracked, for final authorization and power. The quantum key merely provided the authentication token. Alistair, I am detecting a foreign energy signature entering the building. Marcus Riley's voice crackled from a secure walkie-talkie left carelessly on Julian's desk. I snatched the radio. Riley, he knows, Julian knows you're his mole. Riley's voice was sharp with panic. I lost the decoy key. The FBI is closing in. You need to get the real key out of the building now. Riley, realizing his time was up, had abandoned his assignment, exposing the final link in the chain. The data extraction. I didn't have time to run the reversal protocol. My only option was to use the transfer itself as a conduit for disruption. I modified the transfer code to include a secret protocol, a data mirror. I would force the quantum server to mirror its entire content, the master files of all Thorne Development Group assets, shell companies, and criminal contacts, onto an external storage device during the power surge of the transfer. I plugged the broken compass USB, the architect's drive, into the system's maintenance port. It was the only external storage device with enough capacity and encryption to handle the blast of data. Calibration complete, Julian, I announced, stepping back from the console. The system is stable. Proceed with the transfer. The quantum jump. Julian Thorne, his eyes alight with psychotic glee, pressed the quantum key to the authentication port and initiated the sequence. The lab instantly roared to life. The neural scanners pulsed violently, and the containment chamber surrounding Arthur Thorne's body crackled with energy. T-minus 10 seconds to full consciousness transfer. Eleanor fought her guards, screaming through my mother's vocal cords. Don't let him do it, Alistair. He'll wipe the database. I didn't look at her. I watched the broken compass USB, T minus 5 seconds. Data mirror protocol initiated. The USB drive began to flash furiously, sucking in the massive data stream from the quantum server. At T minus 0, a catastrophic surge of power hit the lab. The lights shattered, and the main server rack exploded in a flash of blinding light. Julian Thorne's body collapsed, his own mind temporarily erased by the feedback. The transfer was successful. Julian Thorne's consciousness was now housed within the body of his father, Arthur Thorne. The escape. I ripped the broken compass USB from the smoking console. The data mirror was complete. I had the entire archive of the Thorne Development Group's criminal empire. The man in Arthur Thorne's body sat up slowly, his frail, elderly face now animated by the youthful, ruthless intelligence of Julian. The assets are secure. Julian, Arthur breathed, his voice deep and gravelly. The transfer is complete. I am Arthur Thorne. He looked at the unconscious body of his former self. Now, Alistair, use the reversal protocol on her. Wipe the mind clean. I can't, Julian, I said, holding up the now completely drained broken compass USB. The power surge destroyed the quantum server's memory. The reversal protocol needs the quantum server's architecture to run the clean sweep. You have the empire, but you don't have the clean slate. I had saved my mother's brain from destruction. Silas Thorne was still inside, but he wasn't erased. Julian Arthur snarled, getting to his feet, his frail body radiating pure malice. Then I will kill the both of you. The security team, now recovering from the blast, stormed the room. Marcus, the engineer who helped me on the barge, rushed in with his private extraction team sent by Elias Vance's network. Extraction is go, get the doctor and the asset, Marcus yelled. I grabbed the hand of Eleanor Silas Thorne, who was dazed but conscious. We fled through the shattered window and onto the adjacent maintenance platform, rappelling down the side of the corporate tower as Julian/Arthur screamed his fury from the lab above. We narrowly escaped the Thorne Development Group headquarters thanks to Marcus and his extraction team. We were now back in San Francisco, hiding in a secure industrial loft near the docks. I had the broken compass USB, the single irreplaceable copy of the Thorne Development Group's entire criminal archive, and the body of my mother still hosting the mind of Silas Thorne. The sociopath was furious, trapped in a temporary state of shock and impotence. You destroyed my server, Eleanor shrieked, my mother's voice cracking with rage. You ruined the final stage of the transfer. I have the consciousness, but I lost the power. You're alive, Silas. I reminded him, my own exhaustion overriding my fear. And you have a clean body. Julian has the power, but I have the receipt. The problem was that the broken compass USB was protected by a triple-layer quantum-sourced encryption, the same encryption that made the drive explode the quantum server. I had mirrored the data, but I couldn't access it. The FBI's interdiction. Julian Thorne, in Arthur Thorne's body, moved instantly. He didn't use the police. He used the federal assets he now commanded. Anya Sharma, my technical lifeline, contacted me on a secure channel. Alistair, the FBI has issued a national bulletin. They're looking for Dr. Alistair Finch and his mother, Eleanor Finch. The charge: corporate espionage and theft of proprietary assets, the Omnicorp, Aegis Tech patents. Julian is using the stolen data to frame us, I realized. He's consolidating power under his father's name. Anya had tracked the federal interdiction point, the NYPD precinct, where Detective Marcus Riley had first interrogated us. The FBI was seizing all local evidence, including the dummy quantum key and Riley's files, to ensure no official trace of the conspiracy remained. The Psychopath's proposal. Eleanor. Silas Thorne, realizing the extreme danger, regained his chilling composure. We have a common enemy, Alistair, he stated, his voice dropping to a smooth, manipulative register. Julian and Father's body controls everything, including the FBI. We need to expose him, and the only way to do that is to access the data on that drive. The drive is locked, I said, holding up the USB. It needs a specific neural frequency Kia pattern unique to the transfer system. You only used one half of the equation, Eleanor smirked. You used my psychopath's mind, the aggressor, to run the transfer, but the quantum key requires the signature of the recipient, the dormant consciousness that received the transfer. I stared at him. You mean Arthur Thorne, but he's brain dead. No, Eleanor corrected me, his eyes gleaming with a terrifying realization. The recipient of the first transfer was your mother, Eleanor Finch, the passive recipient. The drive needs her unique neural signature, the pattern of the mind that lost the fight, to unlock the archive. To access the evidence that could destroy Julian, I needed the unique final brainwave pattern of my actual mother, the mother's ghost. I knew the location of the original neural signature. It was on the preliminary research notes I had secured from my home lab before fleeing. I risked a trip back to my old Victorian house in the suburbs. The lab was ransacked, but I found the microfilmed notes hidden in a wall safe. I rushed back to the loft. I connected the broken compass USB to the secure console, then attached the neural sensor to Eleanor's head. Alistair, I am Silas Thorne. Eleanor stressed, trying to exert his will. You won't find her pattern here. I don't need your consciousness, Silas, I replied, my hands shaking. I need the physical architecture of her mind, the passive, unique resonance of Eleanor Finch's dormant neural pathways. I initiated the sequence, feeding the archived signature from the notes into the live scanner. For a moment, the monitor flashed erratically. Then the console stabilized, displaying a single powerful surge of recognition. The broken compass USB clicked, and the archive files opened. The master archive was accessible. The revelation of the twin. The archive was a massive encrypted ledger of transactions, shell corporations, and coded messages. The key to the entire Thorne empire was now on my screen. But the first file I clicked on wasn't financial, it was personal. It was a scanned, highly confidential file from the Thorne Development Group's internal medical records. The file was a DNA matching report. It showed a near-perfect match between the DNA of the former corporate head Arthur Thorne and a woman listed under a pseudonym, the Architect. I stared at the screen, my blood turning cold. The file listed a 99.9% genetic match. The only possible explanation was Arthur Thorne had a twin sister, I whispered, turning to Eleanor. The founder of the entire network wasn't Arthur. It was his twin who used his identity to build the empire. Eleanor. Silas Thorne examined the report, his expression shifting from rage to stunned realization. The architect was not Elias Vance Allister. Elias Vance was just the patsy who provided the tech. The architect was the true founder, Arthur Thorne's twin, the one who commanded the original crime network. The original crime network was founded on a secret identity and genetic deception. The puzzle was far deeper than I thought. The ultimate villain was still hidden. The discovery that Arthur Thorne had a near-identical twin sister who was the true architect, the founder of the criminal empire, shattered everything. This genetic deception was the foundation of the network. I cross-referenced the medical file with the encrypted communications in the master archive. The twin was referenced not as an accomplice, but as the primary decision-maker who controlled the original Omnicorp/Aegis Tech acquisition and ordered the elimination of threats, including Eliza Vance. The twin never existed legally. Eleanor Silas Thorne analyzed, pacing the loft. They used Arthur Thorne's identity, the good son, as the face, while the twin operated the criminal enterprise. This explains why the transfer was so important to Julian. He wanted to replace the face, not the controller. Julian is Arthur's son, I realized. But the twin is his aunt. The focus shifted. We needed to find the twin, the real architect, who was still operating the network while Julian in Arthur's body was merely the usurper CEO. Tracking the architect. The archive contained a deep-level data cache of historical WITSEC, files evidence of the program's use as a cleanup operation. I spotted a recurring encrypted file tagged Project Clean Slate Witness Relocation Protocol. This file links the WITSEC program directly to the Thorne network, I explained. It details the location and identity of every asset the architect had to disappear or eliminate. Within the protocol, I found a current active relocation file. The subject was listed as Eleanor Finch, my mother's identity. Julian is trying to disappear me, Alistair, Eleanor stated. He believes I'm still a liability even after the transfer. The relocation protocol is set for tonight. The relocation file contained a private address and a time, a secluded, highly secured manor in Palo Alto, California, designated as a WITSE safe house used for high-value corporate witnesses. The safe house was controlled by a private security firm, a subsidiary of the Thorne Development Group. This isn't just about disappearing you, Silas. I said, a terrible suspicion forming. Look at the security assessment on the file. It's flagged for high-security long-term containment. It's a prison, and the only people who know this location are the architect and Julian/Arthur. The return of the mole. Just as we prepared to leave for Palo Alto, the loft door burst open. It wasn't Julian's private security. It was Detective Marcus Riley, his face grim, backed by a single uniformed officer. I found you, Doctor, Riley said, gun drawn but steady. The FBI seized my files. I know Julian set me up. I know the quantum key was fake. I know I was retrieving evidence for a criminal. Riley's obsession had returned, but this time it was aimed at justice, not a promotion. Riley Julian Thorne is in his father's body. He is the criminal. He has taken over the network, I stated quickly. And the woman you see is not Eleanor Finch. She is Silas Thorne. Riley glanced at Eleanor, at the gentle face of a grieving widow. He hesitated, his skepticism fighting the chaos of the last few weeks. Eleanor seized the opportunity. Detective, I need to tell you where my fiance's killer is hiding. We found evidence in the archive. The architect is waiting at a safe house in Palo Alto. If you help us, we can expose the entire corruption. Riley saw the opening. He needed the architect to prove his case and redeem his reputation. He lowered his weapon slightly. Palo Alto, you lead. I follow. The Palo Alto safe house. We drove to Palo Alto. The safe house was a sprawling, secluded mansion, the perfect place to disappear a threat. We breached the perimeter using the dormant WITCC codes from the master archive. We moved through the dark, opulent house. The security system was sophisticated, designed to keep people in, not out. We found a secure, high-tech monitoring room. A single, elegant figure sat at the main console, overseeing multiple screens tracking global financial markets. She was middle-aged, impeccably dressed, and bore the unmistakable, chilling resemblance to the coma victim Arthur Thorne. The architect was found. She looked up completely unsurprised to see us. Silas, I knew you would bring the broken compass the archive here. You were always too predictable. The game is over, Aunt, Eleanor sneered, using the term to needle the architect. It's just beginning, Silas, the architect countered calmly, her eyes fixed on me. I didn't bring you here to imprison you, Eleanor. I brought you here to use you. Your body is the perfect clean slate for the final transfer. The final trap. The architect pressed a button on her console. The monitors switched from financial markets to a single live view, Detective Marcus Riley standing in the hallway, surrounded by 5 of the architect's private security guards. Your little mole Silas was a convenient delivery service, the architect stated, but his use ends now. The architect turned to me. I am Dr. Vivian Thorne, Arthur's twin. I am the true founder. I faked Arthur's stroke and put him in the body of a loyal brain-dead scientist. Now I need your expertise, Alistair. You will run the Project Chimera transfer one last time. You will transfer my consciousness into your mother's body, and you will use the reversal protocol to completely wipe out both my brother Arthur and my nephew Julian. She pointed to the wall, where a massive, fully operational Project Chimera unit was hidden behind a paneled wall. You will give me the ultimate disguise, Alistair. The body of a forgotten civilian, free of criminal association, the body of your mother. I looked at the woman who wanted to steal the last piece of my family. I had the archive, but she had the ultimate power and the final transfer equipment. Dr. Vivian Thorne. The architect sat calmly at the console, watching her security team restrain Detective Marcus Riley in the monitoring room. The massive, sophisticated Project Chimera unit glowed behind her, awaiting the final transfer. You have the perfect body right here, Alistair, Vivian commanded, gesturing to my mother's body. It's clean, legally non-existent, and possesses the neural architecture you stabilized. I will become Eleanor Finch, and the entire Thorne Empire will disappear with me. And what about Silas? I asked, glancing at Eleanor, who was now strapped into the donor chair of the Chimera unit. Silas Thorne is an unstable variable, Vivian stated. I will use the reversal protocol on his current vessel, your mother's body, to fully cleanse it just before I transfer in. He will be erased, and your mother's mind will be gone forever. This was the last chance. I had to stop Vivian and save the architecture of my mother's brain from a total wipe while somehow keeping the master archive, the broken compass USB safe. The architect's secret. I began setting up the transfer, manipulating the console under the pretense of calibration. You said Julian transferred into Arthur's body. I challenged Vivian, trying to distract her. Why do you need to wipe him out? You should be a team. Vivian laughed, a dry, brittle sound. Julian is an idiot. He was so focused on the power, he didn't realize Arthur's body was a biological failsafe. Arthur didn't have a stroke. I injected him with a neural decay agent 5 years ago to keep him dormant, only revealing the stroke when I needed to transfer out of my aging body. When Julian transferred into Arthur, he absorbed the latent agent. Julian/Arthur will be fully cognitively degraded within 48 hours. Vivian's ultimate plan wasn't just corporate control, it was biological dominance. She was moving into the freshest, cleanest body available, my mother's. You will transfer me into the new donor, and then you will use the reversal protocol to completely eradicate the consciousness of Silas Thorne. The calculated risk. I plugged the broken compass USB containing the master archive into the console. I need to analyze the donor's neural resilience one last time before I run the wipe, I claimed. I activated a proprietary diagnostic sequence I had built into my original Project Chimera, Codia neural feedback loop designed to overwhelm the central control unit. Alistair, what are you doing? Eleanor, Silas shouted, struggling against the restraints as the console lights flared. I'm not going to erase your mind, Silas, I whispered, working frantically. But I'm not going to let Vivian take my mother's body either. We're going to use your mind as the catalyst. I set up a 3-way forced transfer. 1. Vivian Thorne, Donor 1 to Eleanor Finch's body recipient. 2. Silas Thorne, Eleanor's architecture. Donor 2 to Vivian's current body recipient. The goal, force. Silas Thorne's powerful aggressive consciousness out of my mother's body and into Vivian's current aging body, trapping the psychopath in the enemy's failing vessel. Vivian would be stopped and my mother's body would be emptied, giving me a chance to recover her original consciousness later. The quantum blast. Hit the transfer switch. The room erupted in a blinding, deafening quantum blast. The consoles exploded. The system, unable to process the dual transfer command, went into catastrophic overload. When the smoke cleared, Vivian Thorne's body was slumped over the console, completely unresponsive. Her consciousness had failed to anchor in the unstable field. Eleanor Finch's body, the initial recipient chair, was still strapped in, but the neural monitor flatlined. The aggressive Silas Thorne consciousness had been violently ejected. The only movement was Silas Thorne now inhabiting the older, frail body of Dr. Vivian Thorne, struggling to his feet. "Alistair, you put me in a wreck," Silas Vivian roared, looking down at his new-aged hand strapped in the body of his greatest rival. "I'm back where I started. I had saved my mother's body, which was now completely vacant, a clean slate, but I had unleashed the psychopath into the aging body of his enemy." Riley's redemption. Just as Silas/Vivian lunged at me, Detective Marcus Riley burst into the room, having escaped his guards in the chaos. "NYPD, freeze!" Riley yelled, his gun trained on the struggling figures. He ignored the scientific equipment and focused on the man who had tormented him. Riley saw the enraged, familiar eyes of Silas Thorne glaring from the face of Vivian Thorne. "The architect," Riley stated, his voice ringing with grim certainty. "You were both the psychopath and the puppet master." Riley didn't need the science. He needed the criminal. He fired a single non-lethal shot, taking down Silas Vivian. "The game is over, Thorne," Riley said, securing the handcuffs on the former architect/psychopath. I looked at Riley, then at the smoking broken compass USB. "You didn't get the clean slate, Detective," I admitted, "but I have the master archive." I handed him the drive. It's the complete, unencrypted history of the Thorne Development Group, the WWITSEC. Corruption, and every name you need. Use it to expose the system, but protect my mother's name. The fallout from the Palo Alto raid was contained thanks to Detective Marcus Riley. He used the master archive, the broken compass USB data, not for public exposure, but as leverage against the highest levels of the Department of Justice. Riley ensured that the FBI took custody of Arthur Thorne, containing Julian Thorne's consciousness, and Dr. Vivian Thorne, containing Silas Thorne's consciousness. The official story: two brilliant but deranged corporate executives attempted to seize the Thorne Development Group using experimental technology and were apprehended thanks to the heroism of the NYPD. In exchange for keeping the catastrophic truth of the consciousness transfer and the WITSEC mole out of the public eye, Riley secured full amnesty for me. I received a federal grant, an untouchable new identity, and custody of my mother's body, the clean slate. The clean slate. 6 months later, I am Dr. Alex Brandt, living in a remote, highly secure research facility in the Pacific Northwest. My focus is singular: to restore my mother, Eleanor Finch, to her body. The body is healthy, stable, and completely vacant, perfect, blank slate. The physical hardware is sound, but the software is gone. I have successfully analyzed the final faint residual patterns of her original consciousness, fragmented and dispersed across the quantum field during the first transfer. I call the project Project Reunion. My father figure, Elias Vance, the architect's patsy, now free, thanks to the data I provided, helped fund and equip my new lab. He understands the cost of scientific obsession. The fate of the thieves. Silas Thorne, in Vivian Thorne's body, is imprisoned in a maximum security medical facility. The trauma of the transfer and the deterioration of Vivian's body have rendered him catatonic. The ultimate sociopath is now silenced, forever trapped in a failing prison. Julian Thorne, in Arthur Thorne's body, is also incarcerated. The latent neural decay agent has begun its work. His brilliant, ruthless mind is slowly dissolving, and he is a medical anomaly the federal government struggles to contain. Detective Marcus Riley was cleared of all suspicion, hailed as a hero, and promoted within the NYPD. He calls occasionally, reminding me that the public may have a clean slate, but we hold the truth. Project Reunion. Today is the day. I have refined the transfer protocol one last time, reducing the power output to a gentle, targeted pulse. I am not introducing a new mind. I am retrieving the fragmented memory of the old one, hoping to coax it back into its original home. You're not just a vessel, Mom, I whisper, adjusting the final sensor array over her head. You are the consciousness I designed this all for. I activate the refined quantum field. The room glows with a soft, steady hum, no violent surges, no power spikes. I introduce the gentle digitized signature of her memory, the smell of her favorite jasmine, the sound of her laughter, the memory of her holding me as a child. The neural monitor begins to flicker. The line jumps not with an aggressive, organized pattern like Silas's, but with a slow, hesitant wave-like frequency. It is a familiar, disorganized, but unique pattern Eleanor Finch's signature. After 5 long minutes, the field stabilizes and shuts down. The monitor shows a stable, waking brain pattern. The mother's return. I wait. And finally, Eleanor Finch's eyes flutter open. They are warm, soft, and confused, the eyes of my mother. She looks at the sterile lab, then at me. Alistair, she whispers, her voice weak, but distinctly her own. The flowers. The jasmine. Was I dreaming? I had a terrible dream about numbers and metal. I grasp her hand, tears streaming down my face. You were sleeping, Mom, a long, long time, but you're awake now. You're finally awake. I saved her body, survived the psychopath's occupation, and fought through the criminal network. I put a psychopath's mind in her body, but in the end, I used the very tools of my scientific ambition to bring my mother's soul back home. The risk was catastrophic, the lie was immense, but the reunion was real. The trauma of the experience will remain my secret, the cost of the miracle. I know I can never use the consciousness transfer technology again. I dismantle the Project Chimera unit piece by painstaking piece, ensuring the dangerous knowledge dies with me. My mother is back. And that is the only scientific triumph I will ever need.